Today we're going to learn about powers. If you remember, powers are a convenient way to write repeated multiplication. There are two key words that we need to remember: repeated and multiplication. I'm going to stress these two terms over and over again in the next couple examples. In a power, there are two components. There is a base and there is an exponent. Okay, the exponent is written above the base. In our first example, we're going to look at 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. Having said that, you might ask yourself, there must be an easier way of expressing this, and there is. As I said before, powers is a way of writing repeated multiplication. As we can see here, there are numbers that are being repeated. The number 4 is being repeated. And we also have multiplication, as evidenced by the multiplication signs. The base is going to be the number which repeats itself. So the base is 4. Now, the exponent is going to be the number of times 4 is being repeated. If you count the number of 4s, there is 7 4s. So 7 is the exponent, and 4 to the power of 7 is the same thing as 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. In our next question, we're going to look at x multiplied by x, and we want to figure out a way of expressing this in a different way. First thing you want to ask yourself is, what is being repeated? As you can see, x is being repeated. Now, you have to ask yourself, how many times is this repeated? And this x is repeated twice. Therefore, if I were to express this in a different way, the base would be x because x is being repeated. And how many times is x being repeated? It's being repeated twice. So the exponent is going to be 2. So x to the power of 2 is our final answer. In this question, we want to express s multiplied by s multiplied by s in exponential form. As you've noticed, there is something that is being repeated, and that something is the letter s, or the variable s. How many times is it being repeated? It is repeated 3 times. Therefore, let's use that rough work to answer this question. The base is going to be the s because it's being repeated, and the exponent is going to be 3 because that's the number of times it's being repeated. Therefore, the final answer is s to the power of 3. In this example, we want to expand and then evaluate 2 to the power of 5. If you recall, 2 is the base and 5 is the exponent. The base is the number that is repeated, and the exponent tells you how many times. Let's go ahead and expand this. This is going to be equal to 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. As you can see, the 2 is being repeated, and it's being repeated 5 times. At this point, you can go ahead and use mental math, or you can use a calculator. I'm going to do this step by step. So first of all, let's take a look at 2 times 2, which is 4. Everything else stays the same. And then I'm going to take a look at this 4 and that 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Those other multiplied by 2s stays the same. We're going to continue this on. I'm just going to move this up a little bit. 8 times 2 is 16. That multiplied by 2 just tags along. And finally, 16 times 2 is 32. And let me just scroll out so you can see all the work. I'm going to show you something over here. Like I said, you can use a calculator at this point. Also, some calculators have an exponent button. It may or may not look like this or like this. Either way, I can show you on your calculator since everyone's calculator is a little bit different. In this question, we want to expand, then evaluate -2 to the power of 3. You should notice that the -2 is the base, while the 3 is the exponent. Let's go ahead and expand this. Since -2 is the base, that is going to be the repeating number, and it's going to repeat a total of 3 times. You have to be really careful here. You must keep the -2 in brackets. You can use a calculator to solve this question, but you have to be very careful to insert brackets in the appropriate places. I'm going to do this by hand. First thing is I'm going to look at this -2 times -2. Remember, 2 times 2 is 4. But when you have a negative number multiplied by a negative number, the final answer stays positive. I'm going to write the multiplied by -2 since nothing happened to this one. So that kind of just stays the same. Now let's go ahead and solve 4 times -2. 4 times 2 is 8. And you have a positive number multiplied by a negative number, which will give a final answer that is negative. Therefore, our final answer is -8. In our final question, we have -4 to the power of 5. The -4 is the base, while the 5 is the exponent. Therefore, when we expand this, we have -4 being repeated total of 5 times. Let's tackle this step by step. The first two numbers we're going to multiply are -4 and -4. 4 times 4 is 16. When you have a negative number multiplied by a negative number, the answer is going to be positive. So 16 is going to remain positive. I'm just going to write in the other things that we haven't touched yet, just to show you all the steps. Now we are going to multiply 16 by -4. So let's go ahead and do that. If you don't know how to do this in your head, you can go ahead and use a calculator. 16 times 4 is 64. You have a positive number multiplied by a negative number, which means your final answer is going to be negative. So this is going to be -64. Everything else remains the same since you didn't touch it yet. Let's go ahead and make some space for ourselves. We're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to take -64 and multiply it by -4. Again, you can use a calculator to do this. When you multiply these two numbers, you are going to get 256. If you take a close look at the signs, when you have a negative number multiplied by a negative number, the answer is positive. So 256 remains positive. I'm not going to write in the positive sign. However, I'm going to write in the multiply by -4 since we did not touch those numbers yet. So last but not least, let's finish this off. So 256 times 4 is going to be equal to 1,024. Before we finish, let's take a look at the signs. That is positive, that is negative. When you multiply a positive number by a negative number, your answer is negative. Therefore, our final answer is -1,024. Let me just scroll up to show you all the work.